when I'm working on something like this, I'll a lot of times just go back and forth on adding a highlight and then going back and maybe softening some other color over it if I think it gets too chalky looking. It's just a matter of building up layers. See, on these, I'm actually thinking I like a little bit more yellow in that white than just a stark white highlight. Looks a little softer. And I'm softening it down even a little bit more on the edges with a little bit of this raw sienna. It's starting to look a little softer and prettier. You can see I just keep kind of softening that color around. There's not much in my brush right now, but just noodling around it, it just softens because of that little bit of extender in the faux finish medium. Keeps the paint moving just slightly. So I think that looks rather pretty. So let's back off the pears for a little bit, let them set up. And I'd like to get some more colors in the basket in the same way. I'd like, to add some of the red into the basket. And we're going to clean our brush first. Get that white out of it, because otherwise you'll just have chalky looking paint on your basket if you try to add anything with that white in the brush. But in the basket I want to do some accents of red and, probably some of the blues. So I'm going to go to the 3/8 inch angle brush, add a little faux finish medium so we can keep this paint transparent. And let's first add a few touches of red. You don't want very much because this red's pretty intense. So I'm going to work a little bit out of the brush. But just come in and just side load an edge here and there. You're not going to do every edge or the same size throughout. But you just want a little hint of that color. And again, this is just a glaze of color, just a very sheer, transparent layer. You can just drag some up the middle here and there too. A little bit on the handle here. Okay, now we want to add some of the blue color. Again, and really be careful with the blue because the blue is so intense. And the blue I'm going to keep more away from the center of attention. Just put some here on the outer edges. It makes a good color to float over the shadows, the darkest shadows. So I'm going to do it on both sides of the basket. And Maybe some here under the rim. And again, it's just a hint of the color. We're not trying to make the basket look blue. We just want a hint of that blue in the shadows. Look like you're getting too much, kind of blot it off with your finger or paper towel or something. But you can see that just kind of carries our colors through the basket, so that everything kind of just meshes together. Let's now go back to our little stand for the crow decoy, and we have the shading done. Let's go ahead and put a wash of red over it. Now this, I don't want it to be this really bright red that we used on the pears. I want it to be a more toned down version. So I'm going to add some burnt umber to the red. I think I'm off the camera a little bit. So I'm taking some of the Naphthol red light and picking up a little bit of the burnt umber and mixing it so we get more of a deep barn red. And we're going to use some of the finish medium to make it transparent. So I'm going to pull some of that into the side. And then we're just going to do a wash over the decoy stand. And again, since we've done our shadows, the shadows will show through this transparent wash of color. So I'm just trying to brush this over as evenly as I can. I'm just using this little liner brush. Sometimes you just need to add a touch of water to be able to get a real sharp edge on some of these as you're painting it in. So we can go back and add a little detail to that to crisp it up later. But you can see we've carried the red now into that, but you know, it's a toned down version because we toned it down with the burnt umber. And again, it makes our design all coordinate. Now we still need to fill in the base down here, the background color. And I'm thinking it might be to use some type of kind of a gray, sort of what we did with the crow, but a softer wash of that. We don't want black. I want it to be more of a gray color that kind of picks up that kind of greeny blue color from the black that we mixed. So while we're waiting for everything to really set up and dry well, let's go ahead and do a wash of color on the ground. So I'm going to do, again, some of the faux finish medium. And I want this background to be darker at this back edge and lighten as it comes forward. So we'll start with our paint, the strong color at the back, and let it fade out as we come down towards the lace cutout. So I'm going to mix a little bit of water in this, just because since we're doing such a large area, I don't want it to dry out too fast. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of this. You can see when it thins out that it does really have a kind of a deep antique teal color to it. I could even add a touch of red. That would gray it down a little more. Might have been easier to do this before we painted that stand-in for the crow. But just kind of work around it a little bit. So that's a good first coat. You know, we can always go back and add some more layers to build up that color to what we want it to be. I don't want to go back over this too much because it's starting to tack up. Let's add a little shading to the gift tag while we're waiting for things to dry. And we're just going to shade around this left and bottom edge with some raw sienna, which again is our honey brown color. I want to give it sort of a tea-stained look. So I'm going to brush on some finish medium. And then we're going to pick up some of the raw sienna and sideload our brush, and then just come along and float that down the edges here on the left side. We'll highlight the right edge later with some white. Come down on this bottom edge a little. That's a good start. We can let that dry. Again, things are layer after layer. You won't get the buildup that you need just in one coat. Let's put some stems on our pears. And we're going to just use the round brush. And we will do these in some raw umber plus a little bit of white. It's kind of a gray-brown color. And you can do your pear stems either in these kind of long curved ones, or you can do little short squat ones. There's some variation in between. That one got a little bit large. I think I'll have to go back and paint some of that out with the background color. Sometimes things have a way of growing. And then we'll let this one, let's see, we'll have this one curl down over the the basket rim. See if I can go back and wipe out some of this one. Looks a little better, and I do have some of the sand colors on my palette. I'll go ahead and get some of that out. Let's see if things are correctable. So I'm thinking you may want some little specks on your pear. Let's try one. We're gonna add a little bit of water to the pear, because if we want these little specks to be I don't want them to be too noticeable, so I'm just going to dot just a touch of burnt umber, and then I'm just quickly blotting it with my finger. So you just want like little freckles. This is totally optional. You don't have to do something like this. I just it was kind of interesting to add some little you can do more at one time rather than just trying to do single ones. That's kind of fun. Okay, now that I've chased my dogs off, maybe you can hear again. Let's see. I was just cleaning up by this stem here again. After it dried, the darkness of the stem was coming through, so sometimes it takes a couple coats to really clean that up. And then we need to highlight those stems a little bit, so we're going to just use a little bit of the raw sienna and just a touch of white. I'm going to just drag a little line around those. And off center to the side that the light source is on, so as you're facing it would be on the right side. And then I'll come back with just some stark white to hit it here and there to give a stronger highlight. And I'm just continuing to dry brush a little bit of white on here to build up a stronger highlight on these. I think it's strong until it dries, and then it seems like the colors just kind of melt together. And I'm going to go on the left side and do a little darker shadow line. These aren't very definite, it's just kind of a suggestion of color. It's not a perfect outline or anything, it's more just sort of a dry brush to soften the colors together. I would still like to see a little stronger highlight reflection on the pears, so I'm going to try just to really touch in just a little spot of white. And these are, it's almost like a stipple. I don't want anything wipe that off and then just soften them just a hair. Okay, we're going to put a little bit of white on the right side of that little hang tag. So I'm just, with white plus a touch of the faux finish medium, I'm just going to dry brush a highlight down that side and soften it in towards the center. Just trying to clean up those edges as I go along. Cover up as much of the graphite lines as I can. Okay, we need to add our little shadow for the hole where the string's going to come through. So I'm just going to use that gray that we used for the hair stems, which was the raw umber plus a little bit of white. And just fill in that little hole, little circle. On our little stand here, we could use some little highlight on it. So I'm just gonna use the tip of my liner brush to put a little highlight, little white highlight on the upper right side. And just a little reflected highlight on the bottom left, which is a kind of like a little crescent line. Then add a little highlight to the top of this cross part. And again, I'm just dragging some white across it with my liner brush. Don't want anything real definite, just keep it kind of transparent so that the color shows through. You don't want a stark white. And a little white down the right side of the post. Just a little fine white line. This little highlight on the right side is also sort of a kind of a almost like a watermelon shape, or a quarter moon maybe. Not the real sliver of the highlight on this side. This one's a little bit heavier. And we could use a little bit of a highlight probably on this front edge here. make it heavier on the right side and thin out as you get to the left into the shadow. Do some little highlights on the crow. I'm going to highlight the front of him here with some, just use a little bit of white. Because our surface is so dry, we're going to brush a little bit of the medium on the crow. It really makes that float go on a lot smoother. This looks a little stark right now, but usually I find when things dry, they become more transparent. So let's wait and see if that looks a little softer after it dries before we think about toning it down. So let's put a little bit on the head here. Down the beak. I like this area here. The white on his wing's probably going to be a little too stark, so we might have to go over that. If it is, we'll just float some gray back over it again. We can add a little, let's see, we want to add our little rivets on our basket rim. Forgot those. Again, those are going to be our gray color, sort of like the stems. You can see a pattern here where we're repeating colors. And we're going to put two little circles, or just maybe 1/8 inch circles. We'll let those dry. And also, I think we're going to do some little, I've seen some baskets like this that have some little tacks across the middle. So let's do that same thing, but I'm going to make these a little darker. We're going to just a little smaller, maybe 1/16 of an inch. And I'm just eyeballing them, trying to make them straight across. I'll just add a little more interest to the basket when I'm finished. On these two, let's go ahead and do some shading on them, and I'd like to shade to the left side with some of the raw umber. Let's do raw umber plus a touch of the burnt umber. I'm not floating on the little tack, I'm floating on the basket, just up against the tack. So it's like casting a little shadow where it's been hammered into the basket rim. There's just a little, very little floated color around there. And you can do that on these little tacks. Don't try to get too particular, because they're so tiny. We do want them to look like they're set in a little bit, so they're not so flat looking. On this one, we're going to add a little highlight to the right side with some white, and it's just a very fine line. Make it look like that the lights just reflecting just a little bit on that side. And I'm just smudging it with my finger so it's not so stark. And the same on these little ones. It's a real fine little highlight on the right side. As fine a line as you can do. And I would also like to do, make it look like maybe those are rusting just a little bit, and dry brush a little bit of the red down from them, like rust has run down. And we're using that kind of barn reddy color that we mixed from the Naphthol red light and burnt umber. So I get caught up in what I'm doing and I don't remember to talk. You can even add a little bit of that red to the tacks themselves, just to add a little variation. Okay, now the crow's dried, and I really do think that white on the front of that wing just got a little bit too stark. So I want to wash some gray back over that so that it tones it down. And we're just using that black mix that we made from the Naphthol blue, or I'm sorry, phthalo blue, some burnt umber and raw umber. Here I added just a little bit of just raw umber over it, and I kind of like that. Give it a little more natural look. But you can see that it's kind of wet right now, so it's splotchy looking, but it tones that color down a lot once it dries. You can see it a little more clearly. Let's go back and do another layer over the base. And again, we're using some burnt umber, little bit of phthalo blue, and let me try adding a little bit of the red to it. And just try some on a piece of paper somewhere to see the color. And let's think about the color we were using. It's kind of just a dirty, very dirty teal green color. We're going to put some of the faux finish medium on the brush. Pick up some of the mix that we just did, and let's start floating that over the top edge and softening that shading. I just want some variation in the shading, so this has kind of a mottled look. Darker at the top and softening and getting lighter as it comes down.